Live from Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio, AM 740.
Welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler. Hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come gather around the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Anti-corruption crusader, private citizen Norman Traversy is here in Hour 1. He's taking on the judicial system and the Prime Minister, and he's launching a private prosecution case against Justin Trudeau and several of his advisors, alleging obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct justice stemming from the SNC-Lavalin Affair back in February of 2019. Norman has become quite the folk hero. Perhaps you've seen recent YouTube videos where he's been interviewed on Parliament Hill. When I heard about Norman and what he's doing, I thought it was time for this story to go mainstream. And I think it's very important that you hear what he has to say and that he should be afforded a mainstream broadcast platform. Coming up in Hour 2, Dr. Jerome Corsi will be here. Jerome, you may recall, was caught up in the Robert Mueller investigation of Russian collusion, and he was indicted for lying to the FBI along with Roger Stone. Jerome refused to plead guilty for a lesser sentence, and the charges were not pursued after the Mueller investigation wrapped up, concluding there was, in fact, no Russian collusion. Jerome later filed a federal lawsuit accusing Robert Mueller, the special investigator, of illegally searching his phone records and leaking grand jury information. Attorneys for Jerome demanded $100 million in general and compensatory damages and $250 million in punitive damages from Mueller, the Justice Department, the National Security Agency, the FBI, and the CIA. He now has a new ebook out called The Plan to Remove Donald Trump from the Presidency, and he'll be here in Hour 2 to discuss this attempted coup d'etat. Before we get rolling, registration is now open for my live web conference on digital consciousness, and that's happening Thursday, July the 9th from 10:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern. Digital Consciousness, featuring Jim Elvidge, the author of The Universe Solved and Digital Consciousness, A Transformative Vision. This is an exclusive web conference with limited access. We're only admitting 100 people. It'll take place via Zoom. You can go to strangeplanet.ca and under Events and Appearances, click on Web Conferences. All the details are there and the link to register. Again, Thursday, July 9th from 10:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern. Digital Consciousness with yours truly, along with author Jim Elvidge. Strangeplanet.ca, and under Events and Appearances, click on Web Conferences. All the details are there. There's a link to register, and there's also a frequently asked questions section to help you with any technical issues you may have using Zoom. I also want to mention that my new free Conspiracy Unlimited app for iOS devices is now available in the App Store. This means you can now stream Conspiracy Unlimited from your mobile device. And for Conspiracy Unlimited Plus members, you can stream premium content from your mobile device as well. The Conspiracy Unlimited app for Android users is coming very, very soon. Stay tuned. This is a powerful story, one you're not likely to hear about or read about in the mainstream media in this country. Norman Traversy is a retired firefighter living in Ottawa who decided to take on what he sees as rampant corruption in government and in the courts in this country. He's launched a private prosecution case against the Prime Minister, and he's starting to attract the attention and support of retired RCMP officers and others, and I think you're going to want to pay special attention this hour to what Norman has to say and what he's trying to do. Norman Traversy, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
I am swell. How are you?
Terrific. Let's take a few minutes to introduce you to my listeners. Some of them may have seen some of your YouTube videos that have gone viral. Some people may be very familiar with the work that you're doing. Others may never have heard of you before. Let's begin by introducing you to my listeners.
I was a Mississauga firefighter, and Proud to say I was a good one. I got injured several times on the job, a number of concussions. I had fallen through a floor in a fire, and I also had a roof collapse on my head. Ended up with permanent spinal damage. And they put me in public education in the fire department. So I was still in the fire department, but I wasn't fighting fires. And that was a good job. And 14 years ago, I was driving to work. I lived in the town of Erin, and I was driving down the road to go to work from Erin to Mississauga, and I came across a truck wreck. And it was a truck on its side, a fully loaded gravel truck, lying on its side in the ditch, leaking fuel. And after a couple of attempts, I managed to rescue the guy, the driver. He didn't have a scratch on him. He had dropped his cell phone. He was trying to pick it up, and that's why he drove off the road. And I was re-injured my spinal injury, rescuing the guy, and went home, called the fire department, told them what had happened, and saw my doctor a couple of days later. And she said, "You re-injured your back injury," and gave me painkillers, told me to stay home. And the fire chief called WSIB, Workplace Safety Insurance Board, because I'd applied for benefits after being injured. And he said I was no longer a real firefighter and that he didn't expect his people to perform rescues off duty because I was driving to work. I was in uniform. I was 25 years experience as a firefighter, and I rescued someone from a truck wreck. And they threw me under the bus.
The fire chief, in other words, the fire chief interceded and didn't want you to receive workers' comp because you were officially off duty, even though you were on your way to work, you were in uniform, and you rescued someone. What difference would it have made to him if you would receive workers' compensation?
Because the city of Mississauga, I think they're called Level 1, they directly pay workers' compensation rather than the board pay it. And after a few months, I wanted to come back to work, and they wouldn't let me. And because I was a witness in a sexual harassment complaint, a woman that I worked with was being harassed, and she asked if I would, tell the investigation about what I'd witnessed, and I said I would. And that investigation never took place, and that's why they wanted me gone. After 14 months off work without any income, I was living off the equity in my house. They finally let me come back to work, and I was escorted to a little 4-foot by 5-foot cubicle, and they put a shower curtain across it because I had PTSD. That was their solution for a firefighter with PTSD, was humiliate him with a shower curtain. And they had a professionally made sign that I still have that said Norman Traversy, caged animal. I complained to my union, the union boss. He said, "What do you care? You're getting paid every 2 weeks." After 3 months of this treatment, the city's doctor told me to stay home, that I was getting my PTSD was getting worse because of this treatment. And so they fired me. And now I'm a man on a mission. What was it, last August? I saw a video of Brenda Lucky, new commissioner of the RCMP, and she was wearing her red serge uniform and saluting, and there were Mounties behind her, and they were all saluting. And while she was saluting, Justin Trudeau walked up to her, gave her a hug, and kissed her on both cheeks.
He does that a lot. I
thought, what contempt this man has for the person and for the office.
Let me just stop you there. So after being fired from the Mississauga Fire Department, were you eligible for a pension?
Because I'd done legal action against the city, OMERS, the Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement Savings Fund, refused to release my pension because I had taken legal action. And there was a major battle about that. I eventually got a payout. I don't have a pension. And they got rid of me because, well, one, I rescued someone while I was on my way to work, and apparently I should have driven right by. My life would be completely different if I had, but that's unthinkable. It's also against the law, against the Highway Traffic Act to drive by an accident without rendering all possible help.
Right.
In any case, I thought this country is so corrupt through and through. It's corrupt on every level of government. And seeing Trudeau did what he did, and the whole SNC-Lavalin, Jody Wilson-Raybould affair, and I thought the RCMP is not going to investigate. I actually went to RCMP headquarters and wrote them a letter about the corruption and SNC-Lavalin, and they refused to investigate.
Okay, let me just stop you there because we need to explain what the SNC-Lavalin affair is all about. And so SNC-Lavalin, this big Quebec-based engineering company, was charged with, I guess, bribing Libyan officials in Libya.
That's correct.
And so they were going to be prosecuted under federal law, and it is alleged that the Prime Minister or some of his officials interceded on SNC-Lavalin's behalf and pressured then Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould to drop the charges, ostensibly to save Canadian jobs, right?
Jody Wilson, they were also bribing Gaddafi's sons in Mchale. I think they spent over $1 million on liquor and prostitutes, and also bought them a yacht. SNC-Lavalin did. And when you do that, that's called human trafficking. So it also occurred in Canada. The Office of the Prosecutor, who works with Jody Wilson-Raybould, recommended that charges be laid. And Jody Wilson-Raybould went along with the recommendation given to her. And then she was pressured by Trudeau and by Butts and others to drop the whole thing, as Trudeau said, to save jobs. So that's okay if it's going to save Quebec jobs. Not only was she pressured, she was fired.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
so that's a little more than pressure.
And so that's correct. And then the status of this is that the ethics commissioner at the time, Dion, said that these actions by Trudeau and his officials had violated Section 9 of the Conflict of Interest Act. I think you mentioned that Raybould was fired. She was later fired, but she resigned as Attorney General, and also former Treasury Board President Jane Philpott also resigned, and then they were both kicked out of caucus.
That's correct.
Right.
And there were also 5 ex-Attorney Generals, and I think one serving Attorney General, that wrote and said that he should be charged.
And his principal secretary, Trudeau's principal secretary, Gerald Butts, resigned from his role, although he later came back. Michael Wernick stepped down as clerk of the Privy Council. So, again, the ethics commissioner, Dion, said there was a conflict of interest here. The RCMP said that they were going to examine the matter. This all happened just weeks before the federal election. What happened, though, was the RCMP's investigation has stalled because they were denied cabinet meeting minutes.
Records.
Yeah. So that's where we're at right now. So you decided to do what at that point?
At that point, I was watching the proceedings, and I thought, this is thoroughly corrupt, and it was Trudeau kissing the commissioner of the RCMP that was the last straw for me. And I am a student of history, and I know about the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta is an ancient document where they got King John at Runnymede to sign that no one, including the king, is above the law. And that is a very powerful document. And I knew about something called a private prosecution. Before they had police forces, individuals were expected to uphold the law, and if necessary, make an arrest, and if necessary, prosecute someone in the name of the king, in the name of the crown. And that's still in effect to this day. I think it's Section 507 of the Criminal Code.
Yes, you are correct, yes.
Okay, that enables someone to do that. And I invoked that. So I went to Ottawa City Hall. I had drawn up the documents about Justin Trudeau's corruption and obstruction of justice, and also to collude to obstruct justice, conspiracy to obstruct justice. And I wrote that up on the Ottawa court documents on their forms. I walked down there, walked into the JP's office. This would be late August of last year, and handed that over. He says, go for a coffee. Obviously, I've got to have a meeting. And I came back half hour later, and he said, do you swear that everything in this document is true to the best of your knowledge? And I put my hand on the Bible, and I swore. He said, your pre-enquête hearing is on September the 4th.
Okay, just a minute. Let me back up here. So, now this was filed at the Court of Justice in Ottawa?
Yes, Ontario Court of Justice.
Okay. Explain what pre-enquête hearing means.
Okay, pre-enquête means that they're going to decide whether the matter should go forward based on the evidence that I produce. And it is held in camera in that it's just me and a judge and a Crown attorney.
And
they decide what...
The accused in this case, Justin Trudeau, he's not required in a private prosecution to be in attendance, correct?
That's correct. He doesn't even know about it. Because if they throw it out, then, it's as if it had never happened.
And at that point, after you had filed this motion, did you have evidence with you for the judge to examine, or does that come later?
No, I did have evidence. I had a lot of written evidence, and I also had recordings of some of the phone calls that were made to Ms. Wilson-Raybould, and I had those on thumb drives. And I was there, showed up with my evidence, and I had a witness come with me who had also done successful private prosecutions.
This is Gary Mchale. Gary Mchale. I want to talk about him in a second. I just want to get back to the evidence for a minute, Norman.
Right. So Gary had come to Ottawa, and I put him up in a hotel and paid his expenses. And he spent a couple of evenings coaching me because I was a firefighter. I'm not a lawyer. And showing me what evidence to produce, what was valid. And we went to the courtroom that we were scheduled to meet at, and we were a half hour early, of course. And they said, the judge is sick today. They only had one judge in the Ottawa courthouse for a matter concerning Justin Trudeau. And they said, your next hearing is going to be on October the 7th. And so I got that in writing, October the 7th, courtroom 14.
Okay, let me just jump in here. I want to pick up on some points. So in terms of the evidence, and you said you had several boxes full of evidence, you had thumb drives containing recorded phone calls. All this evidence that you had, this was gathered how? This is evidence that was already in the public eye and in newspapers?
Yes, it was already in the public eye. A statement given by Jody Wilson-Raybould in Parliament on the floor. Other documents, the letters from the Attorney Generals, the stuff from the Ethics Commission. There was part 1 and part 2 because he'd also accepted bribes from the Aga Khan, who then lobbied the Canadian government. And we had evidence, and we just wanted the evidence looked at.
Right, and this is the same evidence that the Ethics Commissioner would have looked at in rendering his decision that the Prime Minister had violated conflict of interest ethics. So
that's correct.
So all of this is in a number of boxes. It's given to the Justice of the Peace at the Court of Justice. I just wanted to spend a few minutes now talking about your helper here, Gary Mchale. This is a political activist. Some people may recall he was involved in the Grand River land dispute. This was in Caledonia, Ontario, where an Aboriginal group were protesting at the Douglas Creek estates that were about to be developed. They claimed it was their land. And Gary Mchale was, I guess, trying to get the police to shut down the protest. In other words, to do their job. So this is one of the ways that he sort of gained his notoriety. But you say that Gary Mchale is considered one of Canada's foremost experts on private prosecutions. That's why you reached out to him, correct?
That is correct. I didn't know the man. I managed to track him down, and he came up from where he lives, which is about a 7-hour drive, and we got along well together, and we were quite confident. And to find out that the judge is sick And then it was rescheduled for October the 7th, and I brought Gary out again, and we were prepped, even more prepped this time. And we showed up at 9 o'clock for a scheduled 9:30 pre-enquête hearing, room 14 of the Ottawa courthouse. I also had 3 other people there for moral support that were interested. And so there was a group of 5 of us. I tried the door at 9 o'clock. It was locked. Normally, for these things, you put the names of the people involved in the hearing. So it should have said Traversy versus Trudeau on the door, and it didn't. We went to the front desk, and there was no record of it on there either. And I was politely knocking on the door every couple of minutes, and we stood there till after 10 o'clock. And just after 10 o'clock, the doors were unlocked. A group of people went in, and we went in. And I don't know how, but the clerk of the court said, "You people will have to leave." And obviously the clerk knew who I was, who I'd never met before. And we went and stood outside the door and waited.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here, Norman, because we're going into a break. We'll come back and get to the resolution of this court date in just a moment. Norman Traversy filed a private prosecution case against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show in just a moment.
Exploring theories, uncovering facts, and offering a different view of the universe. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Take a moment and visit my website, strangeplanet.ca. Strangeplanet.ca. It's been completely redesigned. It's much easier to navigate. I think you're going to love it. Strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom and you'll see Inner Sanctum. That's my free monthly newsletter. Click on that and register. Just your email. All I need is your email address, and then you'll start receiving Inner Sanctum every month for free, delivered right to your email inbox. And again, go to strangeplanet.ca, scroll to the bottom, and click on Inner Sanctum to register. And the July issue will be out very, very soon. We're back with Norman Traversy and his remarkable story. He is filing a private prosecution case against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct justice. This goes back to, I guess about February of 2019, the SNC-Lavalin Affair, in which then Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould says that she was pressured to essentially withdraw prosecution from the Montreal-based engineering giant SNC-Lavalin, and she later resigned and then was later kicked out of the party caucus. The ethics commissioner ruled that the prime minister was in violation of conflict of interest ethics. The matter was then handed over to the RCMP for investigation. However, that has really gone nowhere because they can't investigate without cabinet meeting minutes, and those are being withheld from the RCMP. And so enter Norman Traversy, who decided to take matters into his own hands and initiate this private prosecution, which is allowed under the criminal code. If the police will not act or not able to act, then a private citizen has a right to do so. And he filed a motion before the Court of Justice in Ottawa. So you arrive at the court for your hearing, and you're basically locked out of the courtroom. Pick it up from there, Norman, if you could.
Okay, we waited. The 5 of us, and around 11 o'clock or so, a well-dressed woman in a business suit carrying a bunch of books came out, and she looked like a lawyer. So I approached her, and I said, "Do you know anything about the Traversy versus Trudeau matter?" And she said, "Yes, that was dealt with first thing this morning." And I said, "Do you know what happened?" She said it was stayed. And I said, "Can you tell me why?" And she said, you'll have to ask the Crown Attorney.
You'll have to explain what stayed means. So if a case has been stayed, what does that mean? Dismissed? Delayed? What?
Stayed means put on hold.
Got it.
The matter can be reopened at any time. It means press pause.
All right, but
And
that was done.
because-
That was done in your absence.
Yes. It was out. Oh, and then, okay, so we waited until noon, and no one came out. And around noon, I went and tried the door. The door was unlocked, and no one was in the room. They'd gone out a back way. They didn't want to face me. They'd gone out the back door.
The Crown Attorney.
The Crown Attorney and the judge and I guess the secretary or stenographer, whoever that is, the recorder, they'd all gone out the back way. So I have a friend at the court who can get me transcripts, and I had that transcript the same day. And the transcript stated it started at 9:30 when it was supposed to start. I was outside the door knocking on the door while this went on. It lasted less than 5 minutes, and they stayed it for lack of evidence using what they called the Mchale Principle. Mchale Principle is named after Gary Mchale. It's from the Supreme Court of Canada, and I had Gary Mchale standing next to me, the guy the principle's named after, and it was stayed for lack of evidence. Well, we had a crate full of evidence right outside that door. They didn't want to open that door, and that was basically rigging the Canadian election, because if this would have been able to go forward, no matter what, Trudeau would not have won. I mean, he'd have been in court.
Okay, so let me just back up here and pick up on some important points. It was stayed at 9:30, even though your court appearance was for 10:30.
No, my court appearance was for 9:30.
9:30, but you showed up and you didn't get in until 10:30 because they locked the doors.
I didn't get in. Yeah, they locked the door.
Okay, so
and they couldn't have missed me knocking on that door. You know, I wasn't pounding on the door, but I was knocking, and they'd have heard that during the proceeding, and it was stayed at 9:35, and which means it's put on hold. It hasn't been dismissed. It can be reopened, and I am going to reopen it. So that's where we're at now. I've waited 6 months since that happened because I've been told that if I fell too soon after that, it would be considered vexatious.
Right, but I just want to pick up on a point here. It was stayed in your absence. Can they do that?
That's correct.
Is that legal?
No, it's an obstruction of justice, locking me out of a courtroom when I have a scheduled hearing. It's a blatant obstruction of justice by the Ontario Court of Justice and by the Attorney General of Ontario, because they don't do something like that without instructions from higher up.
And so they said that it was stayed due to lack of evidence, but had they looked at the evidence, or was that with you?
No, they had not. They had not looked at the evidence. That hearing was for me to present the evidence. That's my chance to say my story, present my evidence, and then they decide whether or not to go forward. And they did not look at my evidence. I never got to talk. It was a blatant obstruction of justice on the part of the Attorney General, the Ontario Court of Justice. I've got the name of the judge that was there, and I've got the name of the Crown Attorney. And I will be charging them as well. But I can't believe this is happening in Canada.
And they cited the Mchale Principle. Again, this goes back to Gary Mchale, political activist who has been, I guess, involved in a number of private prosecutions. You recruited him to assist you in this case. Do you know? Can you tell us what the Mchale Principle is, what that refers to specifically?
It refers to the amount of evidence required for a matter to go forward. I can't get very specific about it. I haven't really, researched it, but that's what they quoted. Gary Mchale successfully prosecuted the Attorney General of Ontario and won, and he also successfully prosecuted Julian Fantino, Commissioner of the OPP, and he won that one too. So I figured he must know what he's doing, and that's why I recruited him. And I just said, "You're the boss. I'll do what you tell me to do." And they locked us out.
And so then you went to the federal court. You were looking for... Yeah, go ahead.
I went to the federal court, and everything is walking distance from where I live. And I went to the federal court. They gave me a form. I filled it out, brought it back. They said I hadn't done it right. And I ended up going back and forth about 3 times before they said it was okay.
And this is a writ of mandamus that you received?
I didn't receive it.
I
was requesting a writ of mandamus. And a writ of mandamus is just legal. It's Latin for do your job, or I demand. And I was requesting that from the federal court to instruct the Ontario Court of Justice to do their job. And what I got back from the federal court was we have no jurisdiction over the Ontario Court of Justice, which I found bizarre. I then went to the the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and a complaint with the Canadian Human Rights Commission that I'd been discriminated against and that I was not given access to the judicial system, and I put that in. And I got a letter, which I can provide, from the Canadian Human Rights Commission stating that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms does not apply in the Ontario judicial system.
That sounds...
That's what it said.
And, I mean, have you received any legal advice on that ruling? Is that true? Is that true?
Apparently it is true. And that it only applies to federally regulated businesses or enterprises or ministries. And the Ontario Court of Justice is, well, apparently Ontario is a separate country from Canada, from what I've found out.
Or so it would seem.
Or so it does seem. And I went to Elections Canada in person, and I said, look, this is election tampering by, protecting Trudeau from prosecution just before the election, which obviously changed the result of the election. And they wouldn't touch it. They won't go near it. Election.
Norman, I've got to take another time out. We'll come back and discuss further Norman Traversy and his private prosecution case against Justin Trudeau, fighting corruption in our courts, right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
The world is being pulled over your eyes. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To reach Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
We're back with Norman Traversy. So you got no satisfaction with the Court of Justice. They stayed the case in your absence, which you have on legal authority or legal advice is a criminal offense. For the court to have done that, it is obstruction of justice. It's against the law. You sought remedy at the federal court, seeking a writ of mandamus, which basically would tell the Court of Justice to do their job. The federal court said, no, it's not our jurisdiction. You went to the Human Rights Council, and they said they can't help you because the Charter of Rights and Freedoms does not apply to the Ontario court system. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. So what's next then?
Well, here's what happened. People saw what was going on, and this network has organically grown from just the occurrence has got a lot of Canadians and Americans upset, very upset, and people are offering their services. I've got a couple of investigators. I've got people that are putting me on the radio. I've got a company out west has designed a website for me called justiceforcanada.ca. And they've done that. And I've got all kinds of people helping me. I've got forensic accountants that are looking into SNC-Lavalin. I've even got a retired two-star general down in the States that's helping me. President Trump knows what's going on. He's actually read documents about me. I know that because the general was there and handed him a couple of short documents which President Trump read. He knows what's going on. He knows about what's going on with Trudeau. This is not going away. It's been just over 6 months. I'm going to refile stating I have new evidence. Well, they haven't even looked at any evidence, so of course it's all going to be new. And the whole thing's going to start again. If they don't unstay it or resume, and I'll file a new prosecution. And I've got legal help making sure it's done properly, which I didn't have before. And there are a group of thousands of us, and a lot of retired RCMP are really miffed about this. So I've got some retired RCMP helping me as well. It's not going to go away, and we are going to win.
And you're also going to take legal action against the Justice of the Peace and the Crown Attorney at the Court of Justice because they stayed the case in your absence, right? You're going to pursue that?
They obstructed justice. And I'm also going to file a human rights complaint against the Attorney General of Ontario for denying me justice. And we'll see where that goes. Apparently, these are very effective going to the Human Rights Tribunal.
Just let's spend a few moments talking about this network that seems to be growing around you. And people, again, they're seeing your videos and people interviewing you on YouTube. And I recently saw a woman interview you on Parliament Hill just maybe a week and a half ago. And that video went viral. Now there is, I understand, a Gofundme campaign that's sprung up. And but you mentioned some RCMP officers, and I understand that they are writing briefs, in other words, police-type documents that will also be presented at the court.
Well, they're writing briefs for me, and they're making sure it's done properly. So it's going to have my name on the brief and my signature on it, but it's going to be drafted by retired RCMP officers. So it's going to be official looking anyways, and it'll be correctly done because I've never written a brief,
right?
But I have people that have.
And you also have some independent investigators out west that are also working on your behalf, some grandmothers in Alberta?
Yeah, I've got that. I've also got someone in Ontario, and it's grown. It's kind of morphed to not just against Trudeau, but against all the corruption that we've got in this country. We're number 12 in the world for corruption. United States is 34 or something. We're getting more corrupt by the day, and it's because Trudeau's enabling this. So I've got people all over. Apparently, the website is getting a lot of hits from Hong Kong, and those people are interested in liberty as well.
Oh, I'll say.
And,
all right, Norman, I have to take another time out. We'll come back and finish up with Norman Traversy and his private prosecution case against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Back with more in a moment, right here on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serrett. Stay with us.
Where there's smoke, there's The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio.
Norman, give us the website again where people can find out more about this case.
It's justiceforcanada.ca. Not .com, but .ca.
Justiceforcanada.ca. And also there's a GoFundMe campaign. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, there's a link on there. from the Justice for Canada one. But if you just type in Justice for Trudeau and SNC-Lavalin, that's the name of the GoFundMe. But there's a button on the justiceforcanada.ca website where you just click on that and it takes you directly there.
Now, I'm assuming people like Gary Mchale, they're not working for free. Are you ringing up large legal bills at this point?
Yes, I'm ringing up large bills. Like Gary Mchale is working for free.
Ah, okay.
And but I'm paying all his expenses, and I'm paying expenses of anybody else that's working on this. Well, I'm not. The GoFundMe is, which is the Canadians that have donated to this. So anything that needs to be done, we're having a march on 1st of July, and we're going to need a sound system, things like that. We are going to gather, not at Parliament Hill because Trudeau's canceled Dominion Day, but we're going to be gathering nearby, and then we're going to march when there's enough of us that the police won't be able to stop this. We're going to peacefully march to Parliament Hill, stand in front of the flame and sing "O Canada," and then we are going to march to the American Embassy, which is about 4 blocks away, and we're going to stand in front of the embassy. And I've already been to the American Embassy, and I told them to expect thousands of friendly people that are going to be there. And then the plan is for me to deliver a document to the American ambassador or whoever they send to the door, and outlining the corruption in Canada, starting off with Trudeau and his crimes and his corruption, and going through to all the other issues that I won't go into right now. But the reason we're doing that on Dominion Day is that the USMCA comes into effect.
Right, that's the replacement for the North American Free Trade Act.
Yes, and Section 27.5 of that treaty regards corruption, and that they're not to trade with countries that are corrupt, and that any corruption that comes to view will be investigated. So it's my belief that gives the FBI and the Mexican National Police the right to investigate what's been going on up here, including with SNC-Lavalin. And that's the plan. So they would be violating this brand new treaty if they didn't investigate, or at least get the RCMP to investigate and get back to the FBI. And that was put in specifically by President Trump, and he's the one that spearheaded getting that in there. So that's the plan.
Now, in the meantime, you have friends that are retired RCMP officers. What are they telling you about the official RCMP investigation that has been stalled because of basically cabinet privilege? In other words, they're not going to, the Liberal Trudeau cabinet is not going to hand over documents to the RCMP. They're claiming privilege. So where is the RCMP investigation at? Are they basically going to shut it down, or what's happening?
What I was told by these retired RCMP officers, there never was an investigation. It never even got started, and that they're using that as an excuse, as a way out.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there never was one. And, Brenda Lucki would have shut that. Well, she didn't allow it to start.
The commissioner, the RCMP commissioner, Brenda Lucki, who Trudeau hugged and kissed while she saluted him. You're saying that you're told that she would not allow that investigation to take place.
That's what I've been told.
So why do you think...
It never even got started.
Why do you think you have retired RCMP officers coming to aid and assist you? What do they know? What do they tell you about what's happening inside the RCMP and inside the criminal justice system in this country?
What I've been told is that when you get to a certain level in the RCMP or the OPP, you are no longer an honest person. And these are people that were honest, these guys that have been in touch, and ladies that have been in touch with me. And they're telling me things, but that's hearsay, isn't it? But that's what I've been told. So Brenda Lucky, I've been told, has absolutely no credentials for the job she's doing.
And just give me the timeline then again. What's after July 1st, after you deliver the briefs to the U.S. Embassy alleging corruption, and hopefully the FBI will then be forced under the provisions of the USMCA, they will be forced under Section 27.5 to investigate or ask the RCMP to investigate. Let's say that doesn't go anywhere, or that may be a long and drawn-out affair. In the meantime, you're going to go back to the Court of Justice?
That's correct. I will. I'll go back to the Court of Justice, and this time when I go back, there won't be 5 of us. There'll be dozens, and we'll file it. They don't allow cameras in there, but there are lots of sneaky ways of getting cameras in there. And we'll have the whole thing videoed. I've got a number of people in the Ottawa area that can put together YouTube videos. They're going to have to do something.
Is this alleged corruption, is this unique to the Liberal government under Trudeau, or is this, according to your RCMP contacts, has this been going on for some time?
It's been going on for decades. I mean, we can talk about the Avro Arrow, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's very similar, isn't it? Large corporation, and they bulldoze those planes.
Well, that was under the orders of Diefenbaker, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, teach them a lesson. So we used to have a major airplane building industry based in Malton and Mississauga, and now the only thing they've got left is a couple of planes mounted. And that's
how do you see that as a parallel to what's happening right now? I'm not sure I follow the example.
I'm saying that the government and big business interacting. So SNC-Lavalin, they got tens of thousands of jobs. And if they would have been prosecuted successfully, then they would not have been able to bid for any jobs with the Canadian government for 10 years. So that was what was at stake. They'd have been out of business in Canada for 10 years. And that's huge.
Right.
But then they shouldn't be buying yachts for dictators and buying prostitutes. That's human trafficking.
Indeed. All right. Again, Norman, the website and the Gofundme campaign. Give us the details.
JusticeForCanada.ca and Justice for Trudeau and SNC-Lavalin is the GoFundMe. And we're proceeding on this. It's not going to go away. It's going to be back in the Court of Justice. It's going to be in the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, and whatever other method I can use.
And in the meantime, there'll be a big protest on July 1st, marching towards Parliament Hill and then on to the U.S. Embassy. How many people are you expecting?
Now, this is from the people. I'm not the organizer, but I will be there. And we're going to have a number of people speak. So we've got a stage, a sound system. We're not supposed to be doing this, but we are going to do it. And a number of well-known people are going to be speaking. And I'm going to give a short speech and read the preamble to the document I'm going to be delivering. And it's going to be very peaceful, but from the people that I've been talking to that are organizing this, we're even organizing food trucks, that they're expecting well over 5,000.
All right, Norman. Well, good luck. And I'd like to check in with you after July 1st and get an update if that's possible.
Oh, absolutely, it's possible.
Norman, thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Jerome Corsi is next, discussing the plan to remove Donald Trump from the presidency. Stay tuned.